Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results. Hi, I'm Perry Holly, a Maxwell Leadership Facilitator and Coach.
And I'm Chris Cody, Executive Vice President with Maxwell Leadership. Welcome and thank you for joining. We're spending quite a bit of time on the topic of change. This is something that is requested of us often. I don't know if that's the right word, but as we work through organizations, we always lay the foundation of the 5 levels of leadership. We believe it's the common language that will drive a culture. And very quickly, probably right next to communication, we hear a lot about, man, we're going through some change. Can you give us some practical thoughts and advice? And so, as I mentioned in a previous episode, Perry has developed a magnificent, how about that word right there? You like that? Remarkable. Repeat the remarkable. A content piece, and just really get into the weeds of saying this is what you need to do in order to lead through change. So we're going to continue that today. Before we get started, I want to encourage you to go to maxwellleadership.com/podcast. There, we'd love for you to click on this podcast. There's a form there. And if you have a question or a topic, or if you're interested in the 5 levels of leadership, or even leading through change, getting that delivered by Perry or one of our facilitators, we'd love for you to fill out that form and let us know, and we'll follow back up. Well, today's topic, we're going to dive into, do you have a bias for change? Some leaders, they see the need for change and they just move extremely quickly, have a lot of confidence. Others might see the need for it and they may aim, and then don't move forward with the change effort as quickly as others, or maybe at all. And so let's talk a little bit about this. Let's unpack the fact that some have a bias one way or the other.
And I'd like for this to be the kind of personal assessment for everyone listening.
Yeah, that's good.
Where's your bias? But also you need to be looking around on your team. It's very common, especially the pace of life today, the pace of business. There's change happening all the time. There could be change fatigue setting in for some folks, and that they don't have this bias, this leaning. If you're not familiar with that word, bias, you have a unconscious bias, conscious bias, that just the way you have been developed to see things. It's your lens that you see things through. And so this came up on a coaching call with an executive who seemed stressed about something. I said, what's going on? And he said, we are changing we determined, we got some feedback from our clients that they don't like the way we call on them. We had too many divisions calling on them. We want just one salesperson. We don't want to see 5 of you or 4 of you. We want to see 1 of you. And made perfect sense. And I said, well, that's great. The client gives you feedback. That means they want to see you. I thought it was pretty positive. He said, yeah, I don't like it. And I thought, why don't you like it? He goes, well, it's going to affect my team, and we're really going to, I really want to keep things the way we have it going right now. Okay, now I have a problem with this because you're not looking at, first of all, client input.
I was going to say,
that's number one.
That's your customer.
That says, here's what we'd like to see from you, but then you're going to protect your territory, or you're going to protect yourself in this. What is it? I realize this word, his lens, his bias was for himself, for his team. Might have been even, I'm trying to determine still if it's personal, his own personal gain versus the client satisfaction and the growing the business and expanding the footprint, all the things I'd like a sales executive thinking about. I'm not sure he's quite there. So I thought we'd just talk about a few things around what shows up for bias for change, and if you have it or you don't.
No, I love this. And we all do have a bias one way or another. I love how you took just a second to describe it. For those that may not be familiar with it, you'll enjoy this quick story. So I got a call from my son just last night, and they're moving some furniture from one city to another. And he says, I didn't realize how many people are on the road driving with trailers.
I saw a picture with the U-Haul.
Yeah. And I said, oh, interesting. That's now your bias. He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm pulling bias. And by the way, he's never pulled a trailer before. So luckily he got back and forth without any calls from the insurance company. Right. But it was interesting. And I said, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about this. He's like, yeah, I now notice the trailers because I'm pulling a trailer. And I think what you bring up here is really interesting, because not only do you need to be aware of your bias, you need to be aware of the bias of those that are around you, because that will at times and or could affect your bias.
Everybody's got their own set of lenses.
Bias. So I love that we're diving into this in regards to change. Leaders who do have a bias for change. So let's talk about a couple of things here. that if they do, they are not prone to protect their own territory. Yeah. To the example you just talked about, and why we're talking about here is because on a coaching call, what you kind of uncovered there for. And so if they are, this can be a huge problem in a team of individuals that feel like they need to take care of themselves, right? It's about me first. And, coming from the athletic side of things, they say there's no me and team. Well, some people are like, well, there is, and then you rearrange the letters, but there's really not. And you want them to make sure that they're taking care of the business first. For me, this comes back to it just being a major culture thing. And leaders go first. We talk about this all the time. And if you want that culture of that feeling, you better make sure as a leader that you're not prone to protecting your own territory. You want to make sure that you're communicating that. You want to make sure that you're collaborating around that. You're talking about it in team meetings, because that culture will be, it is something that could resonate all the way through. And so as a leader, if you're trying to protect your own territory, by the way, you're going to see that in this example, other sales members on the team.
Hey, John Maxwell here. I'm in the studio. We've been recording all day. And I was thinking about really one of my very favorite experiences that we have, and that is called Day to Grow. If you want to grow, you want to grow in every area of your life. I tell people all the time, you don't want to go to something, you want to grow to something. But if you're passionate about personal growth, development, your team, and growing them, you do not want to miss Day to Grow. I'm going to have some real players with me. Deion Sanders, Jamie Kern-Lima, myself. Oh my gosh, you don't want to miss it. So mark it. Come and see us on Day to Grow. I will promise you this. You come and bring your team, and at the end of the day, you'll come up and shake my hand and say, one of the best days I've ever invested in for myself and for my team. I'll see you there.
And we teach this a lot in the servant leadership content that we offer around why are you trying to get for you, or are you trying to get for others? Are you trying to serve and help the team to succeed and help the client to succeed, the customers to get, in this case, are you all about you? And so you can tell right away where his makeup is that he's trying to protect his own territory, and he's not going to have a bias for change. He's going to go against any change effort that's coming from the top. They're going to have to work with this leader and probably with that leader's team, because now he or she are communicating down to the team, we don't really need to do this.
Right.
No, we want to have a bias that says, the status quo and the client has let us know is dangerous. We're in bad ground here. We need to change that. The second one I thought was that if you have a bias for change, you possess a sense of personal security and self-worth. And this kind of ties to the first one a little bit, but it's saying that you know that it's not about you, and that I'm secure enough to know that actually, we go through this a lot, you and I, is that where am I going to be put into play? Where are the other members of our team going to be put into play? I can't be the answer to everything, but I want to be.
Sure.
So I want to be the go-to guy, but I know we have very highly talented people. So am I okay with someone else delivering something that I could have delivered? Yes, because them delivering doesn't take anything away from me. So change in the organization is going to be for the bigger part for the good of the organization. I'm okay with that. Doesn't take anything away from me or my team. I'm trying to convince the sales leader is that if you take this action, what does that now make possible?
Yeah.
That you, instead of having all these different sales reps calling on this one client, could you use this new go-to-market strategy as a way to open up more opportunity for you? And he goes, well, I've never thought about that. Yeah, because your lens is biased toward protecting yourself. And he was very insecure. And I don't know about his self-worth. That's probably beyond my psychological training degree. Right. But I thought, you're
a coach.
Not a psychologist.
Yeah.
But I just thought that he was protecting him space, but he was a little insecure about it's going to take something away from me to do that. So.
The word you used right there, I think is really key for our listeners or maybe our viewers on YouTube that are watching is the security of a leader in your skill set, right? And I love you were talking about, and I know that you do this because you help some of our other executives the same thing. Like, hey, I know I can deliver that. I know I can coach that. It just may not be the right fit, or they may use somebody else because they have other plans for me or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. All of those things we don't understand. And yet if you're secure enough, then in your self-worth and your delivery as a facilitator and a coach, you're good with it, right? You're good with the change, whether which way it's happening or not. Well, the next one that you're bringing to our attention here is leaders who have a bias for change are committed to the big picture over their own story. Mm-hmm. You put a statement in my notes, and I don't know if they're in the show notes or not, but I love this, is say, how can you connect your team, their story, okay, your story or their story, to the story? Mm-hmm. The story for us here is the Maxwell leadership story. We believe that everyone deserves to be led well. We want to partner with organizations because we want to create, positive, powerful change inside that organization, inside their culture. That's the story. So how do we connect what your story is, what my story is, what our team story is to that story? And we've got to get them to understand the big picture of what we're all doing and then how their picture fits into the big picture. And I think if you're committed to doing that, you're going to have a bias for change in the right way.
I was picturing over the holidays, we were working on a puzzle with the family, but one of the infant children had their own puzzle and gone to get that and wanted to put their puzzle into our puzzle. And I thought, that's really kind of an interesting model to say, I want you to see the big picture, the picture that's on the box, but her little picture didn't fit into our
the bigger
big picture.
That's
but
so
she wanted
good.
it so desperately. I thought, is that the way we do at work? Is I want my picture to fit into your picture. Well, if you get a view for the big picture, maybe I can help link your picture to our picture. So your story to the bigger story of what we're doing. And now, whoa, man, this is so huge on engagement because people say, I know why I'm here. I know why I'm needed. I know why I'm relevant. I know, and change, that's no big deal because we're all going for that big picture thing. And I thought, yeah, that's what I really want on my team. But we have this bias that said, no, just our department or, we're our group inside Maxwell Leadership is just one small part of that. You're a great example of the fact that you got your head up looking and you've been asked actually because of what you do to tap into the other parts and connect and that collaborate and all that because our little story is a great one. And we'd like to just keep our little story. But no, we're going to share our story with the rest of the organization and have it fit into the big vision that Mark and John have for where we're going.
Let me stop real quick and just give you an example. I love the puzzle illustration that you just gave. And then the example just a minute ago, it reminded me, so Mark Cole stepped into, it's been a challenging year for us at Maxwell Leadership, like other businesses, and you're figuring out things and doing things differently. We were having a team meeting right before the break in what you and I are a part of on a daily basis. And he popped his head in and just said, hey, just want to thank you guys. What you don't know what you guys are doing and how that's impacted the big picture. Let me tell you in case you don't know. And we all know because he talks about it quite a bit and we try to keep that in the front of us. But just as a leader, think about that. How often are you telling people that their little puzzle, and I can't imagine you as a grandfather, grandpa, like creating a story of how her little puzzle was going to fit into the bigger puzzle which you're working. You probably created some incredible story where I'm not sure if it made sense, but it made sense to her, right? And so using that as, man, how are we helping our teams understand their part of the puzzle and how it fits into the bigger part of the puzzle? I love that.
Yep. We kind of take for granted here that we are always talking, Mark sticking his head in, and he does that. We take for granted this thing. Most of the places I've been don't do that. And I'm thinking it's really an art to say, are you reminding people about our bigger picture and why you matter in that? And it'll help them with, hey, we need to change to keep that up, to do that. Another, when you have bias for change, you possess a certain level of passion, of energy, stamina that your passion really creates your energy for what's going on. And I'm always thinking about how I can increase the energy level around change. How do I get people to raise? I don't want to say, hey, we're going to do this new thing. And they go, oh, no. And you see the energy go out of the person.
Again, here we go again.
Yeah, here we go again.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, how can I increase that passion and feeling that this is a great thing and I want to be a part of it? It may be hard and there's going to be ups and downs, but do they know the why? Why are we doing what we're doing? So it goes back to, we talked, I think, last week about communication around having that clear communication. Why are we doing this? How's it affecting you? Why is this good for the organization? You having a bias for change, saying, I'm not trying to protect my own territory. Right. I'm personally secure. You making a success over here doesn't take anything away from me. We're in it together. I really want to have that level of passion and energy that people stay bought in.
Yeah, I love that. Another one you have for us here is leaders who have a bias for change are independent thinkers and then willing to verbalize what they really think and feel. I think the second part of that sentence is more important than the first.
Well, it's funny. I want you to finish that. But
No, go ahead.
I said this to a guy. I said, do you have a point of view? Do you have a point of view on what we should do? He goes, absolutely. I said, did you share it with your leadership? Absolutely not. I said, what? And he goes, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm not sharing what I think. I go, so go on. That's where that came from.
Listen, I want to encourage you, man, to share that, right? You're on the team for a reason, so share that. And you will not be able to see change, much less ever lead change as a leader, if you depend on the thinking of others. As Perry has shared in the past, you may not even have a job if you don't share that and just agree with other people
think
thinking.
The same thing.
One of us is not needed at this table.
It's going to be me.
That's right. That's right. So you got to have, I love, Perry talks a lot about having a point of view. I was on a conversation yesterday and I was coaching an executive and we were talking and I said, I'm just going to pull a line real quick from a good friend of mine. You know him well. He's on our podcast. I said, I have a point of view, but I'd like to know what your point of view is first, right? First. Yeah. You tell me yours first. And so have that, but then be willing to share it. And I would encourage those leaders that are listening to this, if you don't have an environment where your team feels comfortable doing that, you got to fix that because there's brilliance in the room. Perry created another piece of content for us called Inclusive Leadership. And man, like how many of those principles fit into change? Yeah. And you think about how we need to do a better job of inclusively leading on that. So maybe you go, maybe I'm not a good independent thinker. Maybe you go, I don't spend a lot of time thinking. Well, the first thing we would tell you is you need to think more on your side of the business, on your puzzle. You need to think on that. You need to reflect on that and figure out what is really, truly going on. And to develop this mindset, I wrote down a couple of things that I try to think about as I have developed my independent thinking skills. I've also then had to, which is the second part of your sentence, I said it's even more important. I've also had to learn how to verbalize him at the right point in time and to be comfortable in that. And we have an environment around here that allows that to happen, so that has helped me. But here's a couple of things I wrote down. And man, how do you develop this independent thinking mindset? Encourage yourself to be critical. It's not a bad thing to be critical and to analyze the business when you're thinking on the business. Be creative. This is something I've got to work on. I've really got to try to create creativity, if that's the right way to say it, in my thinking. Encourage diverse perspectives in this inclusive leadership that you developed for us. And then the last one I wrote down is to challenge assumptions. Now, our listeners and our viewers on YouTube are smart enough to know what happens when you assume something. So Perry's not going to explain it to you. He wanted to, but I'm not going to let him explain it to you yet. But man, challenge the assumptions of the business. Yeah. I love when we bring new people on and they're like, why are you doing that?
Why do you do that?
Well, that's just because the way we've always done it. Well, that's, right? So think about that. There's a couple of things for you to just say, man, maybe write those down and spend some time thinking on the business, and maybe those 4 will help you.
Last one, I think that leaders have a bias for change, they possess enough resilience to make the mid-course corrections, to see the change through, to go uphill, which most change usually is. They can handle the resistance that comes from others. They're resilient enough to fight through the tough part and to keep going on that. So we mentioned earlier that the vision probably won't change, but your plans, they change all the time. Things work, things don't work. Be okay with that. Yeah. You're not changing the vision, but it's changing how we're getting to the vision. Yeah. And some things work, but it takes a resilient leader to really have that bias to keep up with change, because I know it's going to get hard and it's going to be uphill, probably both directions, and I'm going to have to fight through that.
Everything worthwhile is uphill. Well, as I wrap up for us today, Perry brought 6 thoughts that really are questions you can go back on and ask yourself. I love what you said early on. I don't even know if you realize you said this. You said, hey, this is about self-awareness. That's really what we're driving in this episode, is for you to spend time reflecting and understanding where you're at in regards to change. What is your bias for that? We talked a lot about what it does look like. I wrote down real quick. I always try to say, well, what does it look like on the opposite side of that, right? To get my head around the concepts. And so I wrote down, well, obviously we're going to resist change. I want to avoid any new ideas And maybe even I get a little bit of, and this is something where as you're reflecting and you're in self-awareness, if you feel this, it's okay to admit it. Maybe you get a little uncomfortable. Maybe you have a little anxiety when you know that you're going to face change, the unknown. Then you might know kind of, some of them get fueled by that. And that may give you a little bit of an idea of what your bias is. But it's really important for you to understand, whether you're listening or watching us today on YouTube, it's not right or wrong to have a good or a bad bias for change. The key is what you said, is to have self-awareness to understand where you are so that you can surround yourself with people that maybe have a different bias, or maybe you can even grow in the other side of it. Because there are some, I'm thinking about some leaders I've worked for where, man, their bias is like, let's go. Mm-hmm. And maybe they should, back off a little bit on that. And I heard this example one time, and I'll throw it back to you, where they were talking about having a bias for risk and for change and excitement, and the CEO is off the charts, and unfortunately, so was the CFO. So anything the CEO wanted to do, the CFO wrote the check for, right? You may not want to have that same type of bias around risk and change. And so just want you to know, it's not good or bad, whichever way it is. It is what it is. To be aware of that, reflect on that, challenge yourself to grow a little bit on one side or the other, and make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that have a different bias than you do. I
always remind myself, like, bias is a story. Especially if you think about in diversity and equity and inclusion, you think about bias is how you see people and how you have a bias one way or the other. And the way I remember it is that bias is a story I'm telling myself about you without really knowing about you.
That's great.
And so I need to get to know you to overcome any unconscious bias. Well, the same thing here is that bias about change is the story I'm telling myself about change that maybe I've been telling myself for years. It's bad. It's awful. You're going to hate it. It's not going to be successful. It's going to waste a bunch of resources. If that's your story you've been telling yourself, you need to reassess how you see change, because if you don't change, status quo becomes your friend. You are not going to do well in this environment, this economy, the way we are today. You're going to need to be looking outward and telling yourself a different story about change, because you're going to have to change to do that.
Great insight.
All right, great. Yeah, great insight. Enjoy the conversation. Just a reminder, if you'd like to get the resources about this episode, if you'd like to leave a question or a comment, if you'd like to learn about others in our podcast family, if you'd like to see our offerings, you can do all of that at maxwellleadership.com/podcast. We love hearing from you, and we're grateful you'd spend the time with us. And that's all today from the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast.